everyone. We'd like to get started with the Planning Commission ARB meeting. We have an overflow crowd tonight. We have an overflow crowd tonight. We would respectfully request that those who do not have a seat in the council chambers, we will leave the doors open so you can hear and hopefully see, but we are also videotaping the evening's activities, and it will be shown on the city website for anyone. This meeting was advertised in the council chambers. It was unable to be relocated. However, in the future, we will do our best to look for a larger venue. So with that in mind, before we get started, there are a few rules that we need to go over. Of course, we welcome everyone. We certainly appreciate everyone's interest and attendance. If you have any mobile device at all, please silence it. If you have to use it, please exit the chambers. Secondly, we cannot have ongoing conversations, and I would request that the Clayton Police Department ask everyone to be quiet.
You guys keep it down a little bit in here so they can hear and you can hear. Otherwise, we'll have to cut this.
Let me address everyone out in the foyer. Hopefully you can hear me. We would like you to be able to hear what goes on, but that will require everyone in the foyer to stop the conversations. We respectfully request that. If we can keep it quiet, we'll continue. As I said, we do have a court reporter and we are videotaping the proceedings tonight. They will be shown on the Clayton website, so look for them in the near future. When we get to the public hearing, the applicant, of course, will be speaking. We will allow the public to make comments. We will cap each individual's comments to 3 minutes. We ask that you do not be redundant, and we attempt to cut any repetition at that time. Our intention is to stop the meeting no later than 9 o'clock tonight. We will probably continue it to another date to be determined. And we will not be reading any or all of the staff reports in their entirety. They have been posted and they will be summarized. One other thing we would like to request is communications on the day of a meeting. We would like them to be sent prior to noon. It's very, very hard to read and get the information out to all the members late in the day. Then one other thing I'd like to do, in the past week we have had a resignation from the Planning Commission Board. The Board of Aldermen has voted in Scott Wilson to be a new member on the Planning Commission. So we welcome you, Scott, for return engagement. With that, Kathy?
Chairman Steve Lichtenfeld.
Here.
Craig Owens.
Here.
Joanne Bolton.
Here.
Ron Ryan.
Here.
Josh Corson.
Here.
William Lieberman. Scott Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. We have minutes from the previous meeting on July 18th. Are there any changes, corrections?
I sent in my notes, which you saw.
They're already taken care of. Okay. Do we have a motion?
We accept the meetings from the minutes from the last meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Before we get started, I'd like one other note to go down that this is an extremely large and important project for the city of Clayton. It will set the tone for much of the future of our city, for the citizens, for the business community, for the school district, and all entities that are within our city limit. So we want to give full and impartial hearing to the applicant and be able to discuss it, hear all of the public comments, and make sure that the project, that when it goes forward, will be the right one for the entire city. The second part of that is, I think we need to commend the professional staff for their complete review and very comprehensive staff reports that we all have. You can read them all online, or if you have a printed copy. So with that, we thank you very much, and we will look forward to getting started with the public hearing. As everyone knows, this is a public hearing. We will open it. We will proceed then with the staff report, followed by the applicant, and then followed by public input and discussion by the board members. The board will have the opportunity to interact with the applicant if questions or comments come up, but the public will wait until the applicant is finished, and then the public will address all of their comments to the Planning Commission members. Question? Okay. So we do have the public hearing, and do we have a motion to open it?
I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay. Kathy, did you get it?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to move that we open the public hearing for the Centene project.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Susan.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Susan Istanis. I'm the planning director for the city of Clayton. And I'd like to introduce Lewis Clayton, who's the project manager on this project. He's also our planner, city planner. And I appreciate your comments about wanting to give a thorough and well-informed process and time for this board to make their decisions. We too have kept that in mind as we've drafted these staff reports, and we appreciate the compliment on the content of the staff report. This is a very large and important project for the city, and we take that very seriously. We want to be very thorough in our examination and providing our professional recommendation and advice to this board as well as invite the public. Engagement is also a very important piece of this process too. So I just want to reiterate to this board and to the public, we take that very seriously. Thank you for mentioning that. On your agenda tonight, you've got many items. The first item is listed under public hearing for item A. You've already opened the public hearing. This is a rezoning request to SDD or Special Development District. Also, you'll notice under new business, you have items A, B, C, and D. These are not required public hearings, but they are consideration of the applications for sub-districts. Those will not be under consideration tonight. Tonight, you will only be considering the rezoning to SDD. We've discussed that with the applicant. They understand that. I believe the applicant will be giving you an overview of those sub-districts as part of their presentation, but our main focus tonight will be on the SDD. So with that, I'm going to give some brief background about the project, and then I'm going to summarize again, our recommendations and findings. I'm not going to read the entire report into the record as you stated. They're quite lengthy, and they are available on the website. So as I mentioned, this request is for consideration of a rezoning and special development district plan for a proposed mixed-use project known as Centene Clayton Campus. The proposed SDD, which stands for Special Development District, will govern the redevelopment of 4 new sub-districts totaling 9.3 acres. The properties under the current SDD plan for Centene Plaza, those would be the existing buildings of 7700 and 7720 Forsyth Boulevard, will also be incorporated under one plan and ordinance with the properties you'll be considering tonight. All of the properties within the proposed SDD are currently vacant, with the exception of 7711 through 7733 Carondelet Avenue in Sub-District 4. A demolition permit for 7600 to 7606 Forsyth Boulevard in Sub-District 2 has been issued. Sub-Districts 1, 2, and 3 are located east of Hanley Road and south of Forsyth Boulevard. Sub-Districts 1 and 2 are immediately adjacent to Wellbridge Fitness Center, which is at 7620 Forsyth Boulevard, and the mixed-use Crescent condominium building, which is 155 Carondelet Plaza. The eastern portion of Sub-District 3 is located in University City and is immediately adjacent to the Forsyth Metrolink station. Sub-District 4 is located west of Hanley Road on the north side of Carondelet Avenue, adjacent to the existing Centene Plaza, and is comprised of an existing office building, parking structure, and open space, which is currently zoned SDD for the second phase of Centene Plaza. There are 2 properties included in the proposed sub-districts which are not included in the rezoning request. That is 18 South Hanley Road, which is already rezoned to SDD, and 7440 Forsyth Boulevard, which is located in University City. On June 6, 2016, this project plan was presented to the Planning Commission and Architectural Review Board for conceptual review. In your staff report, you'll find a map and a chart which identifies and summarizes the proposed districts, along with tables in Appendix A, which summarize the applicable zoning requirements for each property and whether the proposed development complies with each standard. Just for benefit of the audience, a special development district is a distinct zoning classification for large-scale development. The purpose of the SDD is to encourage innovation in the planning and building of a large-scale development with a multi-phase, multi-year timeline. An SDD is governed by a special development plan and sub-district plans, each of which require approval by the Board of Aldermen. The special development plan provides the general development standards for the proposed development, including the location of project phases and schedules, location and use of each proposed building, the maximum height and size of each building, the location of open space and landscape buffers, general traffic circulation, and the location of parking. Each of the individual sub-district plans provide more detailed information related to each specific phase of the development. So each specific phase requires approval of a separate sub-district plan, which is approved by the Board of Aldermen. The applicant is requesting consideration of a rezoning special development plan and all 4 sub-district plans concurrently, so that's why they're listed as such on your agenda. Approval of the rezoning special development plan is not contingent upon approval of the detailed sub-district plans. So in your staff report, we've outlined the criteria that you're to consider for approval and analysis. Those include such areas such as the planning goals and objectives of the downtown master plan, a compatibility analysis, which includes the proposed height arrangement and uses of proposed development and how they relate to other properties adjacent to the project, a traffic and circulation consideration, pedestrian circulation, parking, landscaping, utilities, and then any zoning waivers and public benefits that the applicant is requesting and or proposing to provide. I'm going to give you just an overview and conclusion of the report from staff's perspective. In conclusion, the proposed project appears to be generally well-designed and will be a significant positive addition to the area and downtown as a whole. Staff has summarized the following critical issues and deficiencies in the required information provided by the applicant to date. First, in terms of the ground floor uses, a significant amount of ground floor space will be used for parking, which is incompatible with the vision of the downtown master plan to expand retail opportunities, create a human-scale public realm, and pedestrian-friendly streets. In terms of floor area ratio, Sub-District 2 will fall below the minimum required floor area ratio, which is meant to ensure a minimum level of density throughout the area adjacent to the Forsyth Metrolink station. Height and massing, the submitted shadow study and context elevations do not provide sufficient information to evaluate compatibility with nearby residential areas. Landscaping, the submittals do not provide adequate information about trees, landscaping, and open spaces to verify the adequacy of buffers and open spaces. Parking, the proposed parking supply exceeds the zoning code requirements, and recommendations of the parking study which may have a detrimental effect on the future success of the area as a dense, walkable, transit-oriented, mixed-use district as envisioned in the downtown master plan. As it relates to the traffic study recommends several important improvements to provide adequate capacity to handle the additional trips generated by the development. And in terms of pedestrian circulation, a pedestrian circulation plan has not been submitted. The proposed vehicular drop-offs and elevated below-grade walkways do not contribute to the downtown master plan vision of increasing pedestrian traffic and creating more street-level activity. With this in mind, staff's recommendation, based on the information we've been provided to date by the applicant, is that the Planning Commission continue consideration of the request to a later date in order for the applicant to submit the required information for continued staff review and for the applicant to address identified critical issues. And then in your staff report, we've listed all of that information that we are suggesting they provide. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. We're ready for the applicant.
Good evening. My name is Bill Reitkeith. I'm the Vice President of Facilities and Real Estate for the Centene Corporation. I want to thank you for joining us tonight to learn more about Centene's proposed design and architectural features of our Clayton campus expansion. As you may know, Centene is a diversified multinational healthcare enterprise with its global headquarters based right here in Clayton. Centene is the second largest corporation in the state of Missouri based on revenues. Last year, we were named the fourth fastest growing corporation in America by Fortune magazine. As Centene continues to grow worldwide, we are committed to the city of Clayton, and we want to continue to be the anchor in this region. This development will serve Clayton and the St. Louis region well in terms of economic development. As Bob Clark will describe to you in just a few moments, the expanded Centene campus is designed to create public open spaces and pedestrian experiences that encourage a healthy environment. The buildings that we will create will be world-class, LEED Gold certified buildings. Our proposed plan would potentially bring 2,000 jobs to Clayton, 1,000 of which are new jobs to the state of Missouri. We are dedicated to strengthening the community, and we look forward to working in partnership with the state and local officials to obtain the necessary governmental approvals in order to make this project a reality. Centene is committed to a transparent, thorough process, and we truly appreciate the comments that we've received thus far. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Bob Clark, the CEO of Clayco Construction, for additional.
Can everybody hear okay? I have a little bit of a voice thing going on, so sorry about that in advance. My mom taught me to feel bad about things I can't control. So I do feel bad about the people that are outside. We're committed to a transparent process, and if we need to have another town hall meeting, which I'm going to talk a little bit about the process we've gone through, we're going to be glad to do that. I know this is videotaped tonight, but we'll also be posting tonight's presentation on Centene's website so that people can have access to it. We feel bad that people are out in the hallway. So, I'm Bob Clark with Clayco. My role here is as part of the development team which Centene assembled, which is, in my view, not only world-class, but the very best that is represented by the St. Louis community. Many of the team are residents of Clayton. We have a great architect, HOK. Guido Abada is personally involved in the design. He couldn't make it here tonight. We have Cushman Wakefield on the team with us, and they're the development manager. Clayco is the project manager, construction manager, and we're all working together very closely as a team. We also have a world-class group of engineers many of whom have done multiple projects in this community. In Clayton, we've also had significant impact on the skyline here as Clayco. I was the developer of Shaw Park Plaza, which I think holds up as one of the finest office projects in the community. I was also the original developer and then the builder of the plaza, a project that I'm very, very proud of, and I said in 50 years would stand the test of time, and I think it's well on its way to doing that. And then we also did Centene Plaza in 2010, so we have had significant representation in the area. One of the best parts about this project is to be able to do something like this with a person like Michael Nydorf. Michael Nydorf has been a champion for the St. Louis community, for Clayton. I can't think of a better civic example of the kind of person that we want to be growing their business in St. Louis and in the state of Missouri. And I just want to personally say that to me, he embodies everything about what we want in a leader in a community, and I personally look up to him very much. So I just want to say that. So we did agree with the city staff in our many, many meetings that this is a lot to swallow in one meeting, or maybe 2 meetings, or maybe 6 meetings, or 8. And so we're committed to a transparent process, which I'm going to walk through, and we're not asking for a vote tonight. Voting will happen when the city decides that it's ready to vote, when the Planning Commission and the ARB decide to vote. We are breaking the project into pieces for the very purpose of being able to digest what we know is a really large, exciting project in the community. So the SDD, I'm going to reiterate what was said by staff. The SDD really sets the parameters as we understand it for the big picture, for the development that Centene needs to be able to rely on, as they've relied on the master plan in their current plans and their current building. And so the SDD really is a global view of the project that we understand sets heights, setbacks, the definition of the project, if you will, and then the sub-districts are where we'll really get into a substantial amount of detail for the Planning Commission, for the residents, for the neighbors, for the other businesses, and for the ARB. And in those presentations, we're going to go through a lot of detail. So tonight, what I think I would like to do, maybe not be here till midnight, is focus our attention on the SDD, go through a pretty thorough presentation of the SDD, which we'll be representing again per our advertisement last week, that we're adding the 7620 property to our zoning request. And then tonight, when we get to the sub-district sections, I would like to take those one by one and just begin the process of what will become a very laborious, detailed, thorough process of vetting for each of those projects. And then if people want to have more questions in detail about those, of course, we can present them. So our intention is to be here for a process that's going to be a lengthy process, a transparent process, and a process where everybody gets to ask whatever questions they want. They might not always like the answers, but we'll always answer the questions honestly. So with that, I think we're just going to launch off into the SDD. Is that a good? Can I ask one technical question? Well, because the agenda has 5 different sections or something like that. Will we be stopping and asking, having a comment period for each part, or should I do the whole presentation?
Well, the public hearing is only on the SDD.
Okay, that's great. So, okay, great. Good enough. So, one thing before I really get started in the whole thing also is that as a community, Clayton has excelled at communication, at the way they've set their governance up, the way they set their processes up, and particularly the neighborhoods the people who live in the community and the people who do business here have come to rely on a really steady master planning process. And the city of Clayton has an extraordinary website. Not every city in America, especially the ones we work in, I can tell you this is the best one that we've seen, has access for everybody in the public to get lots of detailed information. I would encourage the neighbors to experience the website by going and looking at the strategic plan, and then all of the master plans are in the website, which we went back and looked at before we even drew one line on a piece of paper. And I'm going to walk you through what led us to some of the design decisions that we made and how we came to rely on back in 2008 when Centene made the final decision to locate their headquarters in Clayton, and now as we've decided to expand the campus here. The guiding principles and the goals, and I'm not going to read all of these details, but if you read the strategic initiatives of the city, it's to increase density in downtown Clayton and other appropriate areas, to implement the downtown master plan, and to develop an economic incentive program that attracts startups and entrepreneurs. Centene is a startup, believe it or not, and one of the fastest growing in America. So this is, I know I'm telling the planning and ARB a lot of information they already know, so I hope you'll just be patient. But this is basically the CBD of Clayton. This is a plan that's been in place since the 40s and 50s and expanded on in 58, 1977, so on and so forth. And it very much called for residential single-family home kind of neighborhoods on the perimeters, and it called for a very strong downtown CBD district right here. And I think that this slide is set up to represent that our project, while it is a big and significant project for the community, it's always been the wish and dream and hope of the master plan as we understand it to expand here in this direction, and that this project is not enormous in the overall fabric of the CBD. This is a picture of the whole entire CBD as it was envisioned and in real life, and then it includes some of our projects that would be great projects, we think, on the skyline. The SDD process, we've been working with the community in a very wide variety of ways. We said that we would be transparent. We started actually working on this project months and months ago. Mr. Nydorf met with members of the political community and members of the neighbors and even members of the Crescent building before he completely decided what his program was. We had an initial disclosure of the project, which is very similar to what we're presenting tonight, in a public forum on June 6th. We had a town hall meeting that we heavily advertised, to every neighborhood association through Clayton's website. We did outreach for the meeting, and on July 17th, we had a very well-attended meeting at the Clayton Rec Center where we also presented all the information for the most part that we're presenting tonight. Now we have a little bit more detail. We've had more than a dozen meetings with the residents of the Crescent building. We've had meetings with the neighbors to the north in Maryland Avenue. We've had meetings with the Ritz-Carlton ownership representatives. We've had meetings with the residents of the plaza. Not to say that any of them are necessarily supporting our project. I'm just pointing out that we've done an enormous amount of research and outreach and talking with various neighbors, and we'll continue that process as we go through this. We've had weekly meetings with the city staff, with our entire staff and design team since May 11th. This is an unusual kind of experience that around the nation we don't very frequently see, where staff will really roll up their sleeves and work with the project on an ongoing process like that so that we could dot the I's and cross the T's properly. We've responded to over 340 comments already. We've had meetings with all of the utility companies. We've had meetings with MetroLink, and we've also had meetings with Citizens for Modern Transit. And we believe this project is going to be very, very important to the modern transit system and to MetroLink. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So in the SDD presentation, we originally have been showing this image right here, and I just want to show one change that we've made with this very recently. We've come to a letter of intent with the owners of 7620. I just jumped ahead there. And we're going to acquire the current Wellbridge property. We'll be putting Wellbridge in the new property, assuming that it gets approved, and then we would build this project here. So in last week's advertisement, we added this to our SDD application, and at the next formal meeting, that would be the next on the 15th of August, we would be presenting the project in its entirety. And as we understand the special development district, the more cohesive of a development we can do is advantageous to both the city, the community, and to us. So I'm just going to do my best of kind of describing this skyline picture. Many of you are seeing it for the first time. This yellow building here is the Centene current headquarter building. The track 1 that I'll be referring to in subdistrict 1 of the SDD is this project here, which includes the Hanley Tower and then the 7620 Forsyth Garage. Track 2 is this retail, parking, and residential structure that will face Forsyth and Carondelet. Track 3 is a office building project that has a hotel, corporate lodging facility, and more importantly than that, a 1,000-seat corporate and civic auditorium where we're seeing a multi-use kind of facility that will benefit the community. Again, something that's been mentioned many, many years as a goal in the master plans and strategic plans and that sort of thing. We're envisioning a campus that very much looks like from the street what you experience in Clayton now in its first-class buildings, and particularly the Centene campus. So this is a blow-up of the project. Again, I'm just going to go through with a little bit of detail for people that are seeing it for the first time. This is Hanley right here. This is Forsyth right here. This is Carondelet right here. This is Capitol Grill. They got their signs approved. And then this is our current building right here. And then this is track 1, which would be located right here on Forsyth and Hanley. And then this is the 7620 garage. This is track 2. This is track 3. And this is track 4, which doesn't have a determined schedule. That would be a long-term plan that would actually replace the 7711 original headquarter building for Centene. So I want to talk a little bit about the zoning, and in particular how it relates to the master plan. So I've said before I had quite a bit of experience with this master plan in the past. So we have Hanley Road right here, and we have Forsyth Road here, and we have, Forsyth is here, and Carondelet comes through here. So this area, this is the zoning, the current zoning map. In the dark blue, purplish color here is our existing campus. And then these other commercial zonings and designations are vary a little bit. But what's really important about this to the master plan is that this was originally the Clayton Plaza Overlay District. So here this is Forsyth, and this is Hanley. And this isn't in the way distant past. This is the overlay district that I relied on when we did the plaza in Clayton. And this is the same that the Crescent relied on when it was built here. The Ritz-Carlton was built here. The plaza was built here. And so this overlay district called for high-density commercial use, mixed-use development desired, and unlimited height. Of course, that would have to be approved through a PUD process or an SDD process like this. Then something happened in 2010 that that was adopted by the city as a zoning code in 2009. I think it was adopted in 2010, that really changed the framework for what we were trying to accomplish. And so I wanted you to see that we actually had a methodology of how we got our buildings where they are located. So again, what happened in 2009 is over the Clayton, which this didn't, the only part that's superseded is the actual Forsyth TOD overlay district, which is this area here, got overlaid the Clayton Plaza overlay. So the other parts of the Clayton Plaza overlay remain in place except where there have been previous PUDs. And this went in its place. And here, an important thing happened, and that is that this yellow area was designated as a transitional area where tall buildings would no longer be considered in an SDD. That's our interpretation, and that's why we located the tall buildings further to the south. And while I know there's been some angst about where our locations of all of the buildings are, we're working with all the neighbors to minimize those impacts as much as we can, and we're trying to deal with lots of different constituencies in our process. But here you can see the original Clayton overlay district, and then you can see in the red lines the TOD district that occurred in 2009 and 10, which dramatically changed the Forsyth area in this area to a transitional area, and here into a high denser area to have a positive impact on Metrolink and rapid transit users. So I'm not going to read the entire master plan. I know the Planning Commission and the ARB have read it and they know it and they helped write it. I will say that there was an enormous amount of public input. There's photographs of large gatherings of people meeting with the design teams, meeting with the architects, and that this was done in a very systematic, strategic way. And when we read the master plan, and we encourage all the neighbors and citizens of Clayton to do that, we feel like our project is really down home plate in terms of the master plan. So if you read the north central areas, if you read the Forsyth Village District, which is the district that we're in, this always envisioned a high density project, particularly after the Metrolink stations actually were realized from the early planning. The Centene project, I want to point out in the master plan, is mentioned twice in significant areas. In the area of economic sustainability and the kind of positive impact that everybody in Clayton wants to their tax base, and then in the economic development initiative, and then there's actually in the downtown Clayton integration section, there's a photograph of the building that at the time wasn't realized yet, but was actually built, and is better in real life than it is in the rendering, in my opinion. The goals of the SDD, extraordinary landscaping and green spaces provisions. I'm going to address some of that today. Garage entryways by virtue of their location, architectural distinctions and significance that would make the development noteworthy. Susan read some of these. Again, I would encourage people to do it, to go to the website and read this document, because we really did follow this when we went through, and this is pretty much what I'm going to be presenting here today. So in our project, again, this is Hanley Road, this is Forsyth Road here. These are large plaza areas, green areas that we're either have in the project or proposing in the project. We currently have something people are calling the grassy knoll here at Carondelet and Hanley. We're proposing a landscaped plaza directly across from that in this presentation. We have a very generous plaza area between the Crescent building and our proposed residential building. And then we'll have a fairly large plaza area, landscaped area. These areas are pretty substantial in size, and we'll get into a little more detail of that. And we have a very strong connection to Metrolink. And while we're going to talk a little later about the extensive amount of parking that we need to realize our project, We also realize that Metrolink and other forms of rapid transit and biking and pedestrians and people living in the community that can walk to work will be an important factor in the future. And so we think we have addressed both of those issues. So Metrolink, sorry, pushed the wrong button. Metrolink is here. Terrific station. We're hoping to make some suggestions that may improve that some. And then we have a 10-minute walk basically down Forsyth, which again, all the way back to 1958, was considered the major kind of entryway from Forest Park Expressway to the west. Forsyth is, a major thoroughfare kind of, but Hanley is another major road. And so we have this Metrolink station, and then we have this pedestrian walkway that addresses both Carondelet. We've included that we know there's a lot of people that come across the bridge here that enter into the roundabout area, and there's a bike lane here, and then we have this entire pedestrian experience that we're envisioning being completed, which is amazing added infrastructure to the current existing condition. So when you get off Metrolink, you can look at the website later and get a better view of some of the things that we see that people will envision as they walk through the project. Again, the same thing, walking off the Metrolink station to City Hall, which is about a 10-minute walk. Along Forsyth, we have the same kind of pedestrian experience, which would be meeting the city street scape plan that's been adopted by the city. So these are substantial infrastructure improvements that have been a long time coming on the east side of Clayton. So many of you know what the existing conditions are, and this will be all new infrastructure all the way from Metrolink. I don't know if people can see this red dot. So all of the dark green areas are improvements that are going to be made by the Centene project. Likewise, we've added what we think is terrific art to the current Centene project. We have the Leon Gillick canopy, which is the colorful canopy in the plaza area, which we're loving to see people enjoy that are using all the restaurants. We're told some of the restaurants are some of the most active in the whole St. Louis region now. And then we also did the Netcon wind wall on the parking garage. While we wouldn't be recommending that again right now in these buildings, we do have great opportunities for public art, which is a public benefit in the scheme of things. And then in addition to the streetscape, landscaping, trees, irrigation, and all of those things, we're also going to be replacing all of the lights on all of the designated areas per the city plan and adopting the new city standard lights in our entire program. So this is, again, a street activity map that the traffic study starts to address. And then I want to talk a little bit about traffic. So again, going back to the early kind of founding of Clayton through the 50s and the 60s, which are important because the city fathers of that time did a remarkable job of influencing both the expansion of the Forest Park Parkway as a really excellent way to get in and out of Clayton and the CBD, but they also did other improvements, including the Metrolink project, which in the 1950s was not even really envisioned. And once that thing became a prominent idea, the city fathers of Clayton made it happen here. And so you can see the circulation. The city was set up for doing more business development and creating exactly the kind of development that we're trying to create in downtown. So I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail on the traffic, but to say this, there's been a traffic engineer that was hired by the city of Clayton. Staff in the city did all of the contract work with the traffic engineers. This traffic engineer is somebody that is reputable and does a lot of work for the city and other municipalities across the state. We think their principles are well-founded. And as soon as the report was available last week, we made the report available to both Post-Dispatch and the St. Louis Business Journal. The city made it available to others, and we made it available to the neighbors that we've been in meetings with directly. So there's been no hold back of information. As soon as we've gotten the information, we've made the information available so that people can analyze it, scrutinize it, ask questions about it. But in general, in the big picture, and I'm going to let the traffic engineers and staff do the detailed reporting on the traffic, there's about 40,000 people that come into Clayton day in and day out. They come in and they go out on roads that were mostly planned for a CBD district. Our project, during the high impact period times of the traffic, adds about 5%, about 2,000 incoming and outgoing cars. We believe that all of those kind of traffic counts are minimal in the overall scheme of the Clayton Business District. And even if you count all of our cars, we're not adding a substantial amount of car count to the entire community in the city. The traffic study is going to recommend improvements that we think are going to make traffic better after our project than they are before our project. People are used to some log jams in the city now. The lights aren't all synchronized. Our project will add more signalization. Our project will add some lanes to the Forsyth area. And again, we'll make the whole detailed traffic study available to anybody who asks for it. And then the city actually contracts with them, and I'm not 100% sure how that communication process works because the traffic engineer doesn't work for us. But I will say that there were 4 basic recommendations from the traffic study: to create a 3-lane second access point to the sub-district 3, which is where we're planning our hotel and office project with the 1,000-seat corporate and civic auditorium. I also want to say that there will not be daytime events there, so the traffic impact to the corporate civic center would only be in the evening, because it would be Centene use during the day, which would be people already parked in our project. So we add a lane. This is coming restriping Forsyth Boulevard to accommodate east lanes from the garage and metro lot to the east of Forest Park Parkway, widen the Forest Park Parkway off-ramp, so coming down Bland from the west, when you exit into Forest Park, we would have to widen that and redo the signal there and create a new dedicated right lane from southbound Hanley to Carondelet, and that would be way in the future, that project. So again, really significant improvements to the current traffic situation. We're not expecting giant changes to Carondelet. The majority of our changes would be to improve traffic flow on Forsyth and to Hanley. I also say that the vast majority of all of our traffic, with the exception of very few number of cars, will be coming out on the major roads of Hanley and Forsyth and not be on Carondelet in the service road that services the Crescent building from the north. The parking. So again, we recognize staff's comments on the parking study, and I would say a couple things about the parking study. It wasn't very long ago when Clayton was desperate for more parking, and it was, you know, always a big push to add parking to our projects. You know, we're designers and we're urban planners, and we know that in the future we all hope people drive less cars and ride more bikes and use more rapid transit to get to work. Right now, the way the code is written, we are seeking, you know, relatively similar numbers of parking spaces that the current zoning requires. We may be a few hundred parking spots over that, and I'm gonna address that issue in a second. But our parking needs are what we need to build our campus today. We have a very fast-growing business. We're adding about 40 jobs a week in some cases, and we just don't have the capability in this community right now today to support this kind of development with rapid transit and people who are going to walk to work. We hope that that changes, and we are working with the architects right now to find alternative uses for some of our parking garages so that we can adapt the building to other uses in the future. You know, we don't want to waste money and we don't want to waste space, and so we think there's some very creative uses. In the plaza in Clayton, Hush renovated the top parking lot to additional office space. We think uses like that could happen. There could be conversions to apartments. And more importantly, since our Track 4 project is out in the future, we'll have a real-life example of what's happening to our parking in real time. And we obviously are not going to build more parking than we need. But for the Centene to know that they can expand in this community, we really have to know that we can solve our parking problem in a holistic way. I think, again, the parking study is available on the web, and I think if people read it and are thoughtful about trying to understand how it works, it's not as dramatic of a change to the current community as one thinks when they just hear these comments about how many cars and how many parking and that sort of thing. I think you've got to get into the engineering. So this is a study that we actually did too, which would really analyze how many people we would have in our buildings when they're complete and where the people would actually park. We did this to be thoughtful, and we also did it as a response to the traffic study, which asked us to really consider the circulation. So I think we have a very thoughtful strategy on this. We think overall about half of all of the buildings that we build will be used by Centene. So altogether about 2,800 seats in the long-term build-out, 2,000 currently anticipated, and 1,000 new jobs to the state. We think in addition to that, there will be about another 1,500 people that will occupy the rest of the buildings. And we've kind of done a study of where we think those people will come from, how they'll park in the project, how they'll go to work, and how they'll make their way up and down the streets. And in addition, Centene has a strong interior connector system, which is very important to the company from a security standpoint. This currently connects the original 7711 building with the 7700 Forsyth building, with the existing older garage that's on Carondelet, and then we're requesting a bridge that would cross over Hanley. This would be a secured bridge, so it wouldn't be available to outside pedestrian traffic, but it would be available to interior tenants in the building that have a secured card. And we believe that this access continuously through our garages will be the way that people will make their way over to our corporate auditorium. So again, a pretty thoughtful strategizing. So this might be the first time I've ever presented a slide like this, but this is the required stormwater plan. So we have done a very detailed analysis of where the water currently goes, very similar to what you see in your residential requests, and where the water will go in the future. But suffice to say that we have an excellent engineer in stock. They've done a lot of work in the city of Clayton. They're working with all the utility companies, and we have somebody in our office here at Davis who's done a terrific job of working with all the different utility companies. And this is a very high-level utility and infrastructure plan, and obviously there would be enormous amount of new infrastructure created by our project that would eventually have to be replaced at the expense of the community, because much of this utility that is in here in this area now is past its lifespan, and we would be replacing the vast majority of new connections, new pipes, and new infrastructure. So the SDD summary again, at a high level, 1,730,000 square feet of office space, 184,000 square feet of residential that we added to the project to have a more mixed-use project and to meet the goals of the master plan. was not originally in our plan. A hotel would be 120 rooms. We think very high-end hotel, a ballroom or another training room, our auditorium, which would be 1,000 seats, retail of 72,000 square feet, and 2.3 million square feet of parking. So this is the Subdistrict 1 building, the Subdistrict 2, Forsyth and Carondelet building, Subdistrict 3, Subdistrict 4, which would be the long-term building. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I know people have asked a lot of questions about schedule, and they've also asked questions about the traffic and that sort of thing in construction. So this may be a little bit of more detail than you're used to seeing, but I wanted to share it. So we would expect after we get our approvals to begin building this project right here. This project would take about 26 months to build the shell and core of. This would be the office tower building. Then we would build, at the same time, we would build the parking facility. This parking would temporarily be the parking that would be people that would be located in the first tower that we build. And then upon completion of this project here, we'll start our Track 3 project for 2020, probably late 2020 completion. And we would build the 7620 facility at the same time that we build Track 3. So essentially, we would build these 4 projects by the end of 2020 in our plan. So this is a little bit of an engineering kind of looking document, but again, this is Hanley Road. This is Forsyth. We're talking about having the vast majority of our construction traffic enter and exit off of the county Hanley Road. We're minimizing traffic in all of our conversations and discussions, our many discussions with the Crescent and the Plaza. We've talked about minimizing and not allowing truck traffic out on Carondelet because we envision this as very much a very residential corridor, and Hanley Road is built for heavier traffic. So that is our plan for that. Likewise, we would not access Carondelet for the Forsyth project. We would build this project from Forsyth. We would relocate Lyle, and then we would begin the construction on the west side of this facility. We would move to the east. We would start building Wellbridge's new facility, which would be located inside here. We have signed a lease with Wellbridge, and they are planning on moving into this facility as soon as we can complete it. And then this is Track 3. This is the project where our Civic and Corporate Auditorium would go. And then we have our 16-story office building here with a 5-story hotel that would go on the top of it, and that would have a deck that would overlook downtown St. Louis. So that's a lot of information.
Thank you. That was a lot of information.
So can I just ask one more technical question? Should I at least present, I have minor detail on the sub-districts. Would it be helpful to do that or not to do that at this time?
I think minor details so everyone will understand what is going into each of the 4 sub-districts and how it relates to the SDD would be appropriate.
Okay.
In minor detail.
I think it's probably.
Could I ask also, since all the Wellbridge property is currently included, which in all the information that we were given to read wasn't, if you could point out how it impacts, or how that's going to change any of the other structures?
Yes, I will. I'll do that right now. So, and that's a good question. So again, I'm not going to go through all the details of the SDD because we just did the whole presentation, but I will talk a little bit about Track 1. So in Subdistrict 1, we're planning to build the 29-story building from Carondelet. It's 28 stories from Forsyth. It has this transitional area here. We would be incorporating additional parking structure that would attach to our parking podium, which is this structure right here. And then our office building, which is about the same size as the building that we built already, would be built on top of that building. So for efficiency, we would add parking and we would add retail. We have retail in the base of our podium here, and then we would incorporate retail at the new Lyle Road. So this is a kind of watercolor rendering of looking from Capitol Grill and what would be envisioned there. I want to.
The height on that?
It's about 420 feet.
Can you translate that
It's
into stories?
29. It's 29 stories
I
from.
meant the height on the new parking garage.
Oh, the new parking garage is approximately 90 feet tall.
About 7 stories?
It would be 7 residential stories. It's 8 stories of parking because they're smaller stories. It's approximately 90 feet tall.
Is that new garage taking the place of Wellbridge? Is it displacing parking somewhere else? Initially, we did not see that parking garage.
Okay, so
X number of
so
cars.
that's right. That is correct. That allowed us to make all of our other parking garages smaller.
So
They were going to be taller, bigger, and deeper.
the change, there is no change. It's still a total of a little over 5,000.
It's almost the same amount of parking. So it's relatively the same. In our plan, without Wellbridge, we always needed the same amount of parking. And so that's what we showed in our plan, and that's what was showed in the traffic study. There may be some very slight modifications to it, but we don't think they're remarkable, and we're committed to whatever the engineers say that we need to do to make the traffic work properly.
So where is it? What is being reduced? What?
Well, all of the garages are being somewhat reduced. Originally, we had more parking in this podium here. This parking originally was planned to be 4 levels deep, and now it'll only be 2 levels deep. So we had almost 400 cars in there, and now we'll only have 176 cars down below. And I think that's really important because in our more than a dozen meetings with the folks at the Crescent, I'm going to walk you through some dialogue that we've been having with them. I, again, don't want to represent in any way, shape, or form that anyone at the Crescent has agreed to anything, but I think we've had collaborative working sessions and have ongoing conversations about making our project better for our neighbors. You know, their project was built in the CBD in a high-density commercial zoning area, and we're trying to be as responsible as we possibly can because we have a lot of residents that live here too. So I want to just walk through some of the logic. I went through early in the SDD the way the Carondelet Plaza called for high-density development and where it called for it. And when we originally looked at the zoning and when we did the original design, our tower was located adjacent to the Crescent, and this was in our master plan. This is as recently as 16 weeks ago where we were still showing the project, and this was the original model that Centene showed the residents in the Crescent. I think many of them were taken aback a bit by the fact that their entire view to the west would be blocked. And when I started working with the design team, we all agreed, and we started working with the neighbors, and we started moving the tower more towards Forsyth. I will say that the north edge of this tower, as we get closer and closer to kind of the center area here, gets closer and closer to the TOD area that says we can't do tall buildings in that section. So the service road is the line that's described in the Forsyth District TOD. And then we had another iteration. This is the iteration when we bought the parking lot from the city of Clayton. It was agreed to in writing. We understand there was a misunderstanding in terms of where the podium of our building would come in relationship to the balconies on the west tower. but we've moved the building another 8.5 or 5 feet so that we moved it 5 more feet, and then we moved it again to the location that we're proposing now. This podium, the face of this podium here is 3.5 feet into this balcony right here. We've been in, as I said, ongoing discussions with the neighbors about trying to relocate the building further to the north. We believe there's a lot of tremendous negative impacts to the project, including the fact that it forces the core of the building further to the north, and we can no longer service the building properly from the service road. So as the project is currently designed right now, we can back our trucks all the way into the building and under the building to service the building, and then moving the core to the north, our trucks would be out in the alleyway. So there's also, we would be, there's other kind of impacts that go all the way through the whole project. So that's kind of where we are there. We have a drop-off that we proposed in front of our building here, just to kind of describe where everybody is. So people would come in on Carondelet, they would go left in what is now the service road for access to Caldy's, and then we would be putting a highly landscaped granite paver drop-off area here with a water feature and a piece of public art. And on the Carondelet side, or the Forsyth side on the north corner, we carved back below the building here to create a plaza, an area of relief from Forsyth and Hanley, which is a very kind of congested corner, as you may know. And then we're, as I said before, we're talking about granite pavers and very high-end materials. And when we do the actual architectural review presentation, we'll bring all of those materials for the requirement and be able to have them here for people to see visibly. So these are open space materials that we've used in the other Centene project, landscaping and green roofs. And we have a big vision for creating artwork. We think an opportunity, obviously this would have to be thoroughly vetted with the city, but our connector to our 2 buildings would include some kind of connection that would maybe resonate with the Liam Gillett canopy that we did in the other project. So this is a site plan. I'm going to show, this is Carondelet, this is Hanley, this is Forsyth. So we have our small drop-off area here. We're envisioning very nice retail space right here. This patio area is actually about 5 feet lower than the street right here, so there'd be a buffer. So cars zooming up and down Hanley would not be a big factor to people who may be having a dining experience here. We have our drop-off here on Carondelet. Then we have this area where you enter this. You asked a question about the parking. We have this entry here that would be for executive parking. That would be about 176 cars that would go down. And then we have our dock area here. So this is where we create kind of a trickle effect. By pushing the building any further to the north, we don't have enough room to build this core and still get our truck docks all the way underneath the building. So that is the logic on that. From Forsyth, we also have a retail space here. The majority of our cars will come in and go out of the ingress and egress here on Forsyth. This is the old Wellbridge building, which we'll be connecting to. And then this is a lobby area that kind of connects, because this is about 20 feet taller than this area down here. So we'll have a 2-level entry area. Oh, sorry. And then this is a little more detail on how the connector would work across Hanley for our secured crossway. So that's Subdistrict 1. Subdistrict 2, I'll just go through a brief kind of presentation of this as well. This was envisioned originally as all parking structure and originally envisioned to have some office space. in accordance with the master plan and some of our early meetings with both neighbors and residents in the area and the overall community and staff. We've added residential to this project. So this is retail along the base of Forsyth. We have a 2-story, 40,000 square foot retail space, which would service Wellbridge, that would be located here. And then we have a wraparound residential project. We would envision either luxury condos or rental. We haven't decided on the exact program, but there'll be appropriate residential for Carondelet as we see the development. And then again, discussions have been ongoing, and I will also point out that in all of our meetings with neighbors, we always anticipated that we would, as a goal, that we would be successful in coming to some kind of term on the existing Wellbridge property. So in all of our planning, in all of our meetings, in our early representations to the city, we always said, we think this is a better project and this is a better plan. And so we didn't ever on purpose not show them something that we thought we were going to build. And I just think that's an important distinction. So in our meetings, and when we originally started this plan, as we understood the TOD requirements for this parking structure, we were developing a project on Forsyth that was 90-something feet tall. Essentially, it was the same height as the Crescent building. And in our ongoing conversations with the Crescent, other neighbors, and our planners, and just some good logic that's been added to the project, we decided to take all of the parking out of this. It was about 120 parking spots that we removed from the project. We did that to open Lyle up. And originally, Lyle was going to be, Lyle is going to be a full-service road now that's going to be landscaped and have metered parking on it. In addition to that, in our conversations with neighbors, we agreed that we would do more parking underground and that we would take at least a level off of each of these parking structures to reduce the height of these structures. We've been going over various views and that sort of thing with the different neighbors. We think this is highly impactful. As recently as a couple of weeks ago, in meeting some of the neighbors that face the north and other neighbors in the building, we also did lower 2 levels of the parking garage here to further create an opening at where new Lyle will be created. And this creates a really positive effect because we've also agreed that all of our structures, the back of our structures, which is a service road here, we recognize that that's a real road to the residents that live in the Crescent, and we're respecting it as such. And so we've agreed to build all of the back of our garage and our transition areas on Lyle as residential construction. So when you're looking at the facility, it will not look like a parking garage. There'll be no light filtering out from the garage. It'll have brick and windows, and it'll look like when we built the plaza, the first 5 levels, a lot of people might not know that, the first 5 levels of the plaza in Clayton on Carondelet are a parking garage that we made look like a residential building, and I think we were very successful. So our concept here would be to do the same kind of treatment. We've widened Lyle. We've also lowered parts of the garage here. We've also added landscaping along the top of the parking garage. We have a landscape buffer here. And then in working with neighbors, we added vendor and supply parking in the service road. We added place here for relocations for the building. And we're in ongoing discussions about making the service road as usable as possible. And as well, we've made the opportunity available for people to have parking spaces in the garage. We understand there is some need for that, and we would make those available at a market rate, which would be a substantial discount from the cost of the building. So again, this is work we've been doing in the service road with Lyle. Lyle would become a 3 right, left turn and 1 lane in, so it's a 3-lane road. And this road will really service the residents of the Crescent and some of the cars from our 176 car parking garage we think would exit this way. And the traffic study shows that this is going to be very efficient. So then this is a very conceptual view of what we think the residential will look like. And you can see here, this is the Crescent. This is a very realistic image of where our tower sets back from the Crescent. And then in the far distance, you can see our Track 4 tower. And this is a very realistic view from this position. We've also built a BIM model, and we've also used a drone to, I hope we got a permit to do that. We used our drone to fly near the residents so that we could get the actual views from the residents, and probably get fined for that tonight. So then this is that area where we, looking through the parking garage on the east, where Wellbridge would be located below. This is the area to the north of some of the residents on the north view of the Crescent. We are talking about lowering the garage. We originally were the same height as the garage up here. We took an entire level off the garage, and then we're taking these 2 levels off. And what we think happens is that it creates a residential neighborhood feel, which is what we're trying to do, as opposed to what could be the back of a parking garage, quite frankly, in the planning and zoning. So this is...
Have you given any consideration to green roofs on your parking garage?
Well, it's not very economical, but we do have green roofs on all of our other buildings. I am going to talk a little bit about the whole sustainability of our entire project in a minute, but we do have a green roof here. But I don't think it would be affordable to cover the entire parking garages with different roofs. So this is a plaza area that would be created between the Crescent and our proposed residential project. We think it would be a very beautiful plaza area, not dissimilar to the other areas that we've created in other projects here in Clayton. This would be a landscape area. We're working on the possibility of helping solve some other kind of valet and parking issues with some connector stairway here. It would probably be for valet use only. So we're making some progress on that. These are details that would be worked out when we come and actually ask for the sub-district approvals of each of these designs. This is at Carondelet and Forsyth. So everybody knows what's there now. It's kind of it's in need of some repair work, and we are envisioning a very, very beautiful plaza landscape area. And this would really become a gateway to our corporate and civic auditorium that would be just to the east of this plaza. So again, very high-end materials, and I'll bring all of those materials in much, much more detail in the landscaping plan. We have an outstanding landscape architectural team, Jeff Davis and the team at HOK, world class, doing projects literally all over the world, doing the landscaping plan, and so we're sure that we can come up with special designs. And this is kind of precedent images of the Crescent and what we're envisioning for the residential products and materials. And along Forsyth, I will say that we originally had planned something more modern, and this was the look that the architect and the design team originally had envisioned. We're trying to make Forsyth more vibrant. We're trying to create this foot traffic from Metro heading towards City Hall, and we're seeing a lot more activity. We have heard from the neighbors to the north and other neighbors and other people who've been giving us comments in all of our collaborative meetings that they want a more residential feel for this building, and I think you'll see something like that soon. So this is the ground floor plane. So we have retail, 40,000 square feet of retail space. While we don't have retail on the entire floor of this building, we think because this is 2 stories and there's 40,000 square feet here, I think it says about 8,000 square feet down on this end right here. That makes up the whole entire first floor area as retail area, which is very much in the spirit of the TOD, Transportation District. And then this is our residential, I don't know, like it's working anymore. So this is residential on the ground plane. And again, this is, if we go over and see the site, this is about 20 feet lower than this up here. So we have this plaza area down here along this pedestrian way and the bike lane. And then we'll have, we're envisioning possibly having some walk-in kind of townhome, two-story residential units here that we think would be really attractive and do really well here. We want to create an active streetscape, both day and in the evening. So that's District 3. And then I really am going to spend a little bit of time on this amazing corporate and civic center because I think this is really, really important. Again, going back to all the master plans and all the goals and aspirations of the city and my own work in Clayton, you know, we tried back when we did the plaza to bring a theater company here. People were very, very enthused about bringing something here where we could have nighttime events and jazz quartets, and Centene is committed to a world-class facility where right now, I think we all know, there's a dirt path. And I think that's been the aspiration of the community since the 1970s, when I was in high school, to develop this site. And there's been a lot of attempts at it. And I think waiting has been worth it because over the long haul, I think delivering a project like this that has multi-uses really fits the TOD exactly. With our residential right across the street, one could envision walking across the street, taking the elevators up to the deck, the sky deck. It would service our 120-room hotel. We'd have lodging facilities here. We would have our training and ballroom facilities would be located underneath the plaza. And then we'd have immediate great access to a spectacularly designed civic and corporate auditorium. And when we read the SDD requirements and when we read the master plan, it talks about public benefit. And we see this as a huge, huge public benefit to the community. This is going to be a great facility. It'll be designed for full-service performance events, and one could envision, you know, everything from small jazz concerts here where you'll have 40 people have wine and an event to a more substantial event in the evening. So pretty excited about the design. Gio and Eli Hoisington from HOK and the whole HOK team, I think really answered the call to do something that's not overstated, but has some drama to it, and will stand the test of time like the other projects that we've delivered in the community. So this is again from Foresight, the auditorium. This is the landscape plaza area, and this is the drop-off area for the hotel, the plaza, and the auditorium. We've still got some planning that we're doing with the city on that. And so that's Sub-District 3. So I just wanted to talk about a couple other things really quickly. I want to talk about sustainability because back when I showed the very first slide about the strategic plan, it's really obvious there was enormous public input into conversations about the environment, about sustainability, and about what's going to happen in the next 50 years in this community. Centene is committed, Mr. Nydorf is committed to do a LEED Gold building. So that's important and that's terrific and that's great. But he's also encouraged the team, and we're working together with HOK and Cushman Wakefield, who has a terrific sustainability group. We heard loud and clear in the town hall meeting that they want us to do more than what's on paper right now. They want us to be innovative. They want us to find new ideas. and creative solutions, and we're very committed to doing that, and in the upcoming meetings, you'll be hearing more about that. And then the other thing I think is really important is the connection to MetroLink. So I may have passed over it, and I just want to reemphasize again how important we think that connection is to us, and in the long term, how we think it will really reduce our parking need, and we'll be able to convert some of our parking to other uses that could be beneficial to us in the community, but also it may reduce the requirement for such a substantial amount of parking on track 4. But again, we couldn't plan our future without knowing that we would have parking for our employees, and it would be a dangerous situation to build a project like this with not enough parking, because then you have people driving through neighborhoods looking for parking spots, and we heard loud and clear the neighbors don't want that either. So that's the Centene campus expansion presentation. Thank you.
Were you going to say anything more on Subdistrict 4?
Oh, I wasn't going to say much on it, but I will. I did have a couple slides on it. So this would be an expansion of the existing building. And again, this is a long-term plan. This is not in the numbers that you've heard of the current goal for employees from the other projects. This replaces a 100,000 square foot building that's already there, and an old kind of parking garage that is probably nearing the term of its life without a lot of extra maintenance. And so this would really be a twin building, and here you can see that we're taking the grassy knoll. We want to respect that. People are really using this area almost like a park right now. I would point out that our current zoning allows us to build a high-rise building right up to the edge of this corner right now. And so we do think this gives some relief in addition to moving our building to the north here, and moving this building back. It really does open up the views from the Ritz hotel rooms that face westward, and it also opens up views from the crescent balconies and that sort of thing. And we think that's really important. The building design would be very similar to the existing building, and it would be similar height. So this is how we envision the height transition at the grassy knoll, because as you know, right now there's about 18 feet of difference between Carondelet and the stairway where we access the plaza to the restaurants. This would be the actual landscape plaza, which is where the grassy knoll is now. And this would really be a terrific place for a hallmark piece of art right on the corner in Carondelet and Hanley. Same materials, granite, pavers, very similar. Almost got away without that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. And with that, Bob, if you're finished, we'll move into comments from the public.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.
As we get ready for public comments, I'd like to reiterate several items. There is a sign-up sheet. We would like you to sign up with your full name and your address, as well as speaking it into the microphone so that it can be captured on the video and by the court reporter. Also to keep your comments to 3 minutes. And we do have a clock behind you so we can see how long you're speaking. And please do not repeat what someone prior to you has said. So with that, if someone would like to lead off, I see a hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Hugh Scott. I live at 150 Carondelet Plaza, otherwise known as the Plaza in Clayton. I've lived in Clayton for almost 60 years, most of that time in Old Town. My family moved to 7635 Westmoreland in 1951, and my father served on the Clayton Charter Commission in the late 50s. Later on in the 60s, he represented Clayton on the St. Louis County Council. From 1979 until 1991, I was fortunate enough to serve 4 terms as a Clayton alderperson and 2 terms as mayor. I care deeply about Clayton and its future, and I believe that Clayton has prospered over the past 60 years due to good planning and thoughtful development. My personal feeling about this project is that Clayton is lucky to have a well-financed developer in Centene and a very experienced contractor in Clayco. While we're fortunate for this, the project is a massive one by Clayton standards, and we need to get it right. Although it may take more time than Clayco and Centene envision, we owe it not only to our neighbors, but to our whole community to make sure that we get a great development with a minimum number of mistakes. With careful planning, I believe this project will be a great enhancement to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. You did the signing in. Thank you. Move the sign-in sheets for someone to sign. To expedite it, we'll move the sign-in sheet to the side so the next person can sign in while we're in a 3-minute talk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission and Architectural Review Board. I'm Barbara Abbott, 155 Carondelet Plaza, otherwise known as the Crescent. As Bob Clark noted several times during his presentation, representatives of the Crescent have had numerous meetings with members of his development team for this proposed project. We appreciate the time they have spent with us, and as Bob also noted, there are still some things that we have not come to agree on between our 2 parties. During most of our meetings, we repeatedly expressed our residents' primary concerns that the size and the density of the project Centene wants to build, it is simply too big, we believe, for the site, not just for the Crescent, but for all Clayton citizens. We think it will literally line our streets with garages, large parking garages, very tall buildings, and in addition, thousands of additional cars on the streets every day. If the proposed development is not right-sized now, while it is in the planning and design stage, it will contribute to numerous congestion, traffic, and safety problems in the future, and many of these issues will not be able to be reversed once the buildings are up and occupied. We have 3 specific issues at this time that we respectfully request the Clayton Plan Commission and ARB to consider in your review. First is the proposed 28 or 29-story Hanley Tower. We would like to see this tower moved further north so that it is closer to the southeast corner of Hanley and Forsyth. Specifically, we would like for it to clear the northwesternmost point of the residential area of the Crescent. As it is currently designed, this first building is approximately only 45 feet west of the wall of the Crescent. And it is separated only by a narrow street, often referred to as the Circle Way, that will become the access route for trucks that provide deliveries and services to the Hanley Tower, and also the entrance and exit to the proposed underground garage that will continue to create more congestion and traffic problems. Ideally, proposed Hanley Tower would be the same height as and located directly across Hanley Road from Centene's existing tower. When we have suggested moving the building, we've been told by the developer that it can't be moved for a variety of reasons. The 90-foot building restriction on Forsyth, the fact that the Welkridge property was not at that time a part of the development, although it is now, that some of the views from the current Centene Tower would be obstructed, changes to the building design would be necessary. Well, the Wellbridge property is now part of the development, and we believe that the city has the ability to make changes it thinks are in the best interest of Clayton and its citizens under provisions of the master plan, overlay districts, and zoning. It is our position that there is still time for this development to be modified. No construction is underway. What exists now are plans, renderings, and drawings that are on pieces of paper and computer screens. There aren't any actual buildings waiting to be set in place. So we really urge you to take into consideration where this tower is located on Hanley Road. Two other issues that concern our residents are the height of the proposed Forsyth 1 and 2 parking garages. Those are approximately 7, 8 stories along Forsyth. We think that is simply too much, even with the 2-story step down near the new Lyle Avenue that Bob Clark discussed this evening. At one point along this garage, one of the garages, the back wall of that garage is only 58 feet from the north outer wall of the crescent. It's kind of difficult to imagine looking out your direct window directly into a garage wall. It's equally a serious concern that the crescent would be encapsulated on 3 sides by the garages. And yet the design shows that the residential units proposed on the south and east side of that first garage on Forsyth are open rather than being encapsulated like the crescent. Just doesn't really seem quite right. We would like to see the garage, the first garage, shortened. We would like to see the second garage shortened, preferably to the height of the current Wellbridge structure. And we do have some concerns about the Lyle Avenue relocated street that we can talk about at another time. We just really will appreciate that you consider this and that you take a hard look at how these things can be modified now before buildings go up, buildings that will be there for decades. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Doug Chateau. I'm a traffic engineer with Lockmuller Group. We were retained by the residents of the Crescent to perform a peer review on the traffic study that was done on behalf of the City of Clayton. I thought it'd be appropriate for me to follow in Mrs. Abbott's footsteps since it's relevant to the concerns of the Crescent. I should note that the traffic study that was released last week is the first of several iterations. I think that that's been acknowledged that based upon additional scope items that were identified for the city's traffic consultant, they obviously had limited time. There's been some moving targets in terms of this plan has been evolving as this has been going on. So there's one study that's available today. It was actually based upon the July 18th iteration of the site plan, I believe. So there might be some changes that would have to reflect subsequent iterations to that. That study is what I would consider to be kind of the primary guts of a traffic analysis, where it's looking at the adjacent intersections, evaluating the capacity of those intersections, and then looking at the impacts of the development. There are also some additional issues that were raised on behalf of the residents of the Crescent, some of which are more qualitative in capacity, and others related to the scope of the study and trying to perhaps encourage the expansion of it. As I said, the scope of the study has already been expanded. I think there might be some additional elements that might need to be looked at. There's a couple intersections that we've identified that we believe are important to the evaluation of this project that should be included. And I'm gonna avoid getting into the weeds too much tonight in the interest of time. I think what we intend to do is to summarize our comments, share them with staff, share them with the city's traffic consultant, and perhaps also the development team, and give them the opportunity to respond to that. But for tonight's purposes, I wanted to be able to give you some of the highlights in terms of the concerns that or the issues that we've identified to date. As I said, there's a couple intersections that we believe should be addressed as part of the analysis in order to fairly evaluate the impacts of the development. One example of that is Bemiston and Shaw Park Drive that was omitted from the analysis at this point, but all of the development traffic going to and from the east on Forest Park Parkway would have to travel through that intersection, and they do show a meaningful amount of traffic doing that, so I think that should be included in the analysis. Same is true with Central and Shaw Park Drive. There's less of an impact there, but also should be included. Hanley and Bonham is a location that was included, but we think that there need to be some considerations in terms of the adjacent intersection at Shaw Park Drive. Perhaps a larger issue that needs to be raised is what happens on Forest Park Parkway. Obviously, It's very important to this development. In fact, I think the traffic impact study shows about a third of the traffic from this site would be getting onto or off of Forest Park Parkway, traveling to and from the west toward I-170. It's a significant amount of traffic when you look at the overall traffic generation, but the study doesn't account for any operational changes to Forest Park Parkway itself. That's not surprising. Most impact studies would usually focus on the focus streets. Signalized intersections and unsignalized intersections tend to be the controlling points. But in this case, with Forest Park Parkway already having some deficiencies in its operating conditions, adding another 500 vehicles an hour to some of those movements would be detrimental. So we believe that there may in fact be a need to expand the study further to look at what's happening along the adjacent freeway section, if you will. I think that the analysis that's presented so far focuses obviously on the peak hours and the levels of service. Queuing is going to be very important, I think, but that becomes a little bit more qualitative, but it is quantitative. The report did present queues, but I do think that we need to look at what the available queuing is between some of the adjacent intersections and where that queuing can be expected to start to fail the systemic operations along Forsyth and Hanley. Now that's something that should be addressed. The third iteration of the traffic study that's underway will be a simulation model, and I don't think that'll be available until later this month. And some of those queuing issues should in fact be recognized with the simulation modeling that we produced. Trip generation, traffic generation for the development is also important and has a big impact in terms of what the results ultimately show. Obviously, there's a lot of office space that's proposed as part of this. Thank you. I'll try to wrap up. Yes. The traffic generation that is in there right now is based upon traditional general office space. I think we need to ask for clarification of how exactly this office space is going to be used. There has been some reporting that perhaps call centers would be included in the office space. We might go from densities of 3 to 3.5 people per 1,000 square feet, upwards of 6,000 to 8,000 people per 1,000 square feet of office space. If in fact that's the case, that would produce a significant difference in traffic generation. So I think there's a clarification that needs to be offered there. The transit capabilities, a 10% reduction was assumed in the study. That's achievable, and it would be great for the region, as Mr. Clark alluded to, but there also has to be incentives in order to make that happen. I give you examples within the region where unless transit passes are being bought for employees and parking is being charged to the employees, there's not enough incentive to get people out of their vehicles. So that's something I think has to be addressed as part of this process. And I'll try and wrap this up quickly. I think that there are some other issues related to the immediate impacts around the Crescent, and again, we were obviously asked to look at impacts directly related to the Crescent. The character of Carondelet Plaza can and will probably change with this scale of development that we're talking about. We go from anywhere from 360 to 460 vehicles an hour during the peak hours on Carondelet Plaza to upwards of 900 to 1,000 vehicles per hour. That's what's shown in the traffic study right now. The study shows that there's potentially capacity. I think there's some things that need to be clarified, but there's capacity perhaps to handle some of those increases, but it changes the character. You go from what might be more of a residential character to more of a commercial character with that level of traffic. So that needs to be addressed, we believe. And then there's also questions about whether or not the capacity is really there. For example, the queuing on Carondelet from Hanley would extend beyond the alley between Subdistrict 1 and the Crescent today. So anybody coming out of that alley would be obstructed in the forecast conditions. I know we have limited time, so I'll wrap it up right now, but as I said, we'll have more comments and try and be more specific that can be issued to staff and to the consultants so that they can respond to that accordingly.
Okay. Thank you.
Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ed Finkelstein. I live at 7600 Carswell in the shadow of the new project. I rise in support of this project. I think the positive aspects of it have already been brought out, and I compliment Mr. Neidorf and Mr. Clark and their team for developing such a great project that wants to keep him here in Clayton. But I want to talk about just for a moment the other side of the coin. If for some reason this were to be turned down because of the severe restrictions that might be placed on it, there are plenty of communities in this area that would love to have this project, that would bend over backwards and give their eye teeth to have 2,000 new jobs and multi-million-dollar buildings built in their community. So I would caution the staff, who I know worked very hard at this, and the city manager, to not place the kinds of restrictions that make this project unfeasible for Centene to do it. They're going to have to expand. they're buying other companies. They're bringing in 1,000 new jobs, and they're moving people from California to St. Louis. So they're going to expand. If they don't expand in Clayton, they're going to go someplace else. And if we think that this can't happen, that Centene, because of their commitment to Clayton, won't do it, then I think we're going to be sorely disappointed and surprised. They are going to expand. I would hope we could expand in Clayton, because what this means for this community, for the residents, for the businesses, long-term, including the school district, will be tremendous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
First thing I'd like to do is ask if it's permissible for someone who is not a resident of Clayton to stand here and discuss this project.
If you give us your name, yes.
My name is Lou Sauer, and I'm very familiar with Clayton because I lived here for 35 years, and my brother and I developed 14 projects in Clayton, including 4 high-rises. And I have a lot of familiarity with the city and how it works, how it looks, how it feels, and the efforts that we made during the time that we were here. It was our approach, it was all possible to do buildings that are part of a family grouping, that one relates to the other in scale and feel, which is what we learned to do actually in Old Town Clayton. I know a lot of you may be familiar with our earlier projects. When I heard about the Centene project, I thought, wow, what an opportunity this is to have an assembly of that kind of property all in one area with a corporation as a client, where they could really put something together that would be a great image, an iconic image actually for the city of Clayton. As I listened to the presentation just now, got more and more information on exactly how it's going together. I think the Plan Commission really has its hands full here to figure out and determine how to respond to this project. In many ways, it's a wonderful, wonderful project, but does it really fit in this city in terms of its scale, in terms of its look, in terms of the impression it makes as part of the city? I think that's something to challenge the Plan Commission. I think the discussion so far today was way too technical and piecemeal. No one had really stepped up to say how they really felt about the project, which indicates that it's too big to get your arms around. You have to be able to discuss this thing and grab onto it to come to a good conclusion about how it's going to work in the city. What disturbs me about the project is all of the above-grade garages, which are wrapped in these sequin aluminum things that are going to be all over the place, as far as I can tell you. That will suddenly become a powerful image for Clayton. The other thing I'm concerned about is when the way they laid it out, they were really restricted in having to wrap around the Ritz. The Ritz was put right in the middle of the site, and whoever came later had to figure out how to work it all around. And they've actually, if you study it close, they've done a very creditable job with that. Except it's so big. I mean, do you really have to plan 5 billion square feet and 6,000 cars? I mean, 6,000 parking places built up in the air in a city like this is a little hard to see how it really can work. And those are some of the things that I just wanted to pass along, just based on my past experience in some of the projects that my brother and I did here. Thank you for tolerating me.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Ben Uchatel, and I want to thank the City Plan Commission and the members and the staff for the vital role that you've been playing and will be playing on behalf of all of Clayton on this project. You really have your hands full, but I commend you, which you have been and you are doing a terrific job. That said, I'm here to offer words of support for this, I believe, transformative project. I won't try to go into the details. You have them before you. Barbara Abbott raised some important concerns. You have to address them. I'm sure you will. Overall, this is once in a many decades opportunity for Clayton and the region. It's bold, it's creative, it utilizes a Metrolink, which is critical. It provides a major theater, a hotel. It will add several thousand new great jobs for our community, people coming here. And it's being undertaken by a terrific corporate citizen in Centene and a great developer in Clayco. Just a couple of observations. Way back when, years ago, when the Texas County Hospital was getting ready to close, what to do with it. The various plans. Along came Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and they had bold plans for a major development with many, many office buildings. Many people said, thank goodness, too many office buildings, too many people, too many cars. But the Planning Commission and the Alderman and the Mayor persevered, and I think we're all pretty proud of Enterprise and what it's done. Similarly, a different sort of thing, when the old jail was being closed and the plans for the new jail or justice center came along, there was a tremendous hue and cry. We don't want, it would be terrible to have a justice center in the heart of Clayton. It would be dangerous. Also, along came Maryland Heights. They offered to have the Justice Center there, move many of the lawyers, others who were involved with that out there. But the City Planning Commission and the Aldermen persevered, and we have a Justice Center which I think is attractive, works, and is safe. So, in summary, do your job. I know you will, but I hope you will, in the long run, approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Steve. My name is Jeff Morrissey. I live at 7611 Maryland Avenue. I'm an architect. I live just north of the proposed development. I'm going to try to do what you asked and not repeat what people have said, which is going to be a little tough because Lou Sauer has said so many things perfectly. I appreciate Centene's interest in the Clayton area and the substantial investment they are proposing to make. But that investment doesn't just create entitlement. It also brings responsibility. Responsibility to the city, to the neighborhood, to Clayton citizens. And in this case, the responsibility for development of a proper transition zone that bridges between downtown and surrounding single-family neighborhoods like mine. Special development districts and planned unit developments and the like are serious, weighty matters. They often remove the limitations and principles that well-thought-out zoning and master planning carries. These special designations allow developers to basically rewrite the planning rules for an area to their own liking. This is not just a technical step in the process. You're being asked to overturn a city zoning ordinance in effect to change the law. This is about scale, about height, about where large buildings belong and where they don't. The buildings being proposed are gigantic, way, way too big and misplaced. The office towers are bizarrely tall, with huge occupant loads creating the need for long, massive, lightless parking structures. This certainly isn't the Forsyth Village that Sasaki's 2010 master plan for Clayton imagined. That plan doesn't suggest or promote 30-story office towers in this district, giant corporate boxes that would loom over nearby residential areas. The plan calls for tall buildings to be in the true central business district of Clayton, west of Handley, not east of it. And Centene already has a better office site in the CBD, directly to the south of their existing building, the open area at the northwest corner of Handley and Carondelet. Why not use this site first, not last? The proposed tall office towers with floor area ratios off the charts create the need for massive amounts of parking. Why would Clayton ever want multiple huge parking circles marching down Forsyth Avenue, one of the city's main entryways? Is this the image that we want? This in a transit-oriented district of all places, a place where cars are supposed to be limited and even discouraged. We're being told that these giant garages will feel residential by the architectural skin that will be applied. If that's what is desired, why not actually make Forsyth residential? Line it with 4 or 5 stories of condo units with retail expansion. Residents would help patronize those storefront businesses. Parking, in all cases, should be minimized and relegated to the interiors of blocks and to below building and below grade locations. Too much parking in turn creates too much traffic. And while traffic is a concern, it's not the root problem. The problem is that too much office space and buildings that are too tall is being crammed into a zone that was never intended to be at this scale. I would ask you all, as others have already said, to slow this down. We were told just that this development was barely conceptual sketches just a few weeks ago, and yet tonight it is being presented essentially as a done deal. This is not the measured, open, public review process that a project of this magnitude deserves and requires. Please take the time to truly get this right. These are not short-term decisions. These buildings will outlast Centene. Please ask this group to rethink this approach. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeff Bynes. I'm a resident of 6305 Southwood in Des Moines. I have 2 little girls who will be in the Clayton School District. I'm here because I received this doomsday mailer last week, and I was a little bit, fearing that there was this concerted effort to chase Centene out of town. And I'm here to tell you that that sentiment does not speak for me and many others here tonight. The plan is not perfect. I do have issues with the parking garages, but I had no idea that high-rise buildings in place of a very prominent dead zone amidst many other high-rise buildings was so offensive to people. This is the business district for 1 million residents of St. Louis County. It is unreasonable to think that no development will be encroaching on your living space. It's Clayton. It's always been Clayton, and most people here probably expected high-rise buildings in their yard, near them, when they moved here. We are not, as residents, we're not entitled to plentiful parking or light traffic, okay? These are the facts of life in a big city. And usually the sign of a vibrant city that people want to be in. It's clear that Centene has taken great measures to be sensitive to the surrounding neighborhoods, and also they have a big vision to create, a real mixed-use, lively district with public areas, gathering spaces, and to create more feet on the sidewalks and more eyes on the streets. So That said, ideally, I wish this was all happening in downtown St. Louis, so we could really think regionally and recenter the core. But we are an extension of the urban core, Clayton, and I look forward to seeing the dirt moved and the cranes building away. Thank you.
Chairman, members of the board, members of the audience, I appreciate the time. Excuse me, sorry. Appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you. As an employee of Centene and also a member of the Clayton community, I am in full support of this project for a number of reasons. Before, a few years ago, before I came to Clayton, I noticed that Clayton, people were always leaving at 5 o'clock. That it was always primarily a workplace, but nothing more than that. It wasn't the community aspect that I look for in a city. And now, with Centene proposing this new expansion project with their current development in place, all the restaurants currently on Fourth Side and on Centene Plaza, the site is way different. I love walking down Fourth Side and seeing people coming into restaurants, people hanging out with each other, people that want to stay here and move to Clayton because of all the new expansion and all the new development. Members, a lot of people that have recently graduated college, a lot of my friends have chose to leave St. Louis because they say there's not enough jobs. They say there's not enough development compared to other cities in Chicago, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Dallas. And with Centene proposing this new development, I think it's an opportunity to leave a legacy for years to come. If you ever have a chance to meet Mr. Nydorf, he is a man with a vision, a man that understands that we need to make change. And he has instilled the great members of Clayco and the senior management team at Centene to put this development project together. He's built the company from $20 million in 1996 to $40 million today. He's collaborated with HOK, a world-class designer, and Clayco in Lockhart, who once was an entrepreneur himself and started Clayco from nothing. He's successful that want to build an image on St. Louis and leave a legacy in the skyline. I understand that there is a lot of structural, a lot of parking, a lot of those issues, but as you can see from this presentation today, the details that went into creating this didn't happen overnight. This is hours and hours of work going through details, pouring through designs, and something that people are willing to collaborate and change if it needs to be. So to make this short, I'm in full support of this project, and I hope you guys will consider the legacy that it'll leave on this Clayton skyline, but also to the people that are growing up in St. Louis, the young generation that wants to stay in St. Louis because of projects like this. Thank you.
Could I have your name, sir?
Sid Schridhart.
I'm sorry.
Sid Schridhart.
And would you sign that also? Do we have any other speakers? Have you signed in?
I have it. I'll sign it next. Ann Schweddy, I live at 821 Sudbury. And I just want to say, not really comment on the plan so much, as just to encourage all of you to think about how the city will attract young professionals. And that is what will make our city grow and survive, and it will make it a continuing world-class city. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? No? Well, we certainly thank you for all your comments, and would like to remind you that we will be continuing this at a later date also. But we're not finished tonight, because we have a quorum here tonight, and we can certainly make some comments to Mr. Clark and the Centene people at the same time. Yes. Before we go ahead, Joanne has a question.
Director Isonis, I just have a question on one of our staff reports. the one on the SDD, the staff report on the SDD, the chart, appendix A.
Charts.
What page?
It is page 14.
14.
Could you just clarify, the last column says waiver required, and I was a little confused whether that was for the SDD or the underlying zoning.
This chart illustrates what the existing zoning requirements are for the properties as they currently are zoned. And then it summarizes what the proposed STD, the development, how that meets or does not meet that specific requirement. So the column that says waiver required, if it says yes, that means that the proposal exceeds development standard or doesn't meet that. So in order to approve it as proposed, this board would have to approve a waiver from that requirement.
From the original, not from the SDD. Is that what you understand?
Well, from the zoning, current zoning regulations.
Underlying, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Bob, do you have any comments before we go further?
I might at the end respond to a couple of comments, but why don't you go ahead and ask questions while I still have my voice.
Well, I'll start off. I think what we've seen in your presentation has been a complex and, again, comprehensive study of what could be done. I think we've heard several comments from the public that may reflect some of the comments from the commission also. And I think one of them is I do have some concern about the massing of density and what will happen with the parking as well as the traffic on our arterial and sub-roads going through town, as well as certain placement of the buildings because it strings out a lot of the activity, yet it puts virtually no activity right in the middle on Forsyth Boulevard. It's pretty much a parking zone. And as we look at the master plan, it envisioned a much more lively south side of Forsyth, both facade and activity area. We've heard some comments about including more residential there, which then could drive more people walking and possibly increase the retail or commercial part of it also. So I'm just throwing these out as reactions to what we see. Also, what we're seeing is along the parkway in Subdistrict 3, there is both a garage, which is mostly underground from what I can tell, and a tall building. But yet the bulk of the parking is going to be strung out in Subdistricts 1 and 2, because the Wellbridge site now appears to be in Subdistrict 1. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Another thing is, you've mentioned pedestrian usage, yet except for the various small park areas, I think all the pedestrian usage will probably be on the periphery. I don't see any real internal pedestrian movement being considered. The green area, we have several small green areas, and it seems like we may be missing an opportunity at the intersection of Hanley and Carondelet, where we already have the green area just to the south of the current Centene building. Yet, if we look at it from the air, that would be almost the center point of the Centene massing. And to see green on both the west and the east side of that intersection to the north of Carondelet would have a real urban park environment that could be accessed not only by Centene people, but by other residents and office building usage in the area. Now, of course, the conflict there is that the tower is sitting on that potential green area. I'll leave that up to you without further comment. I think that'll take it for me for right now. I'll defer to some of the other members.
So I guess one of my thoughts as I was looking through it is somewhat similar to Steve's, is that we do have this now lengthened stretch of parking garage along Forsyth, and there's, it's a long distance to travel from one end to the other, where we essentially have the tower at one side and we have the auditorium at the other. There didn't seem to be a lot in between, and I wondered why there wasn't more residential facing out onto Forsyth or a bit different character. Because the treatment of those parking garages, if they are going to be parking garages, become critical, but it just seems like a really long expanse of whatever is going to get done to mitigate the appearance of those. And then, like Steve, I also noticed that we have these green spaces, but there doesn't seem to be a consistent connection or logic to how they would be used in sequence. And I'm afraid that if we stretch this vertical internal walkway from the current Centene building across Hanley and down through everything, that the vast majority of the people will come, park in the parking garages, go back and forth to their various respective buildings, and never go out onto the street, and the pedestrian activity that we're hoping for just won't occur. It's kind of like a starter set of questions here. I was also curious if you, is this a commitment that you're willing to make to making these buildings all LEED gold? Is that, I'll call it a baseline starting point?
It's a commitment, minimum.
And get them certified at that point?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sorry.
There really weren't any renderings or views of what coming into Clayton from that east side Forsyth approach will really look like. I get some sense of it from a couple of the views. Again, there's a plaza down there on that side, but I don't think there are really any good views of what that very, I'll call it gateway arrival will appear to coming in out of University City into that part of our city. So which way are we looking here? This is
Looking west.
okay.
So this is the gateway. This is the retail. The Metrolink is just to our
We're
left.
standing at Metrolink when we're standing at the Metrolink station, basically.
We're on the other side. So this is the theater on our left. This is the, so Metrolink, the south side of Metrolink is on this side, just to the left of this view. So, we haven't finished the design of the garage structure, but on the left here is the garage structure. Let me back up a little bit, okay? So this is looking to the east. So this is looking west, and you can see Centene's building back here in the background. Okay, and then if I go back just a couple more, so this view would be right here. Okay, so as soon as you come under the bridge, this is the very first thing that you'll see on the left, and I think it'll be a pretty dramatic piece of architecture.
So how do you all see that auditorium being used by the public, and how will it be shared between the community and Centene?
So we would very much see it as a shared facility. So I think that Mr. Neidorf has talked to members of the council and other political leaders in the community for a long time about this idea. We believe that it's first and foremost a corporate auditorium, but a 1,000-seat auditorium is a lot of seats for a facility And Mr. Nydorf is committed to expanding the uses of this facility so that they could do even a small off-Broadway show there. You could do symphonies. But the majority of the programming for an event like this, in reality, is usually smaller kind of quartets, jazz quartets. But if it's programmed properly, then you could easily handle between 150 and 200 events a year. So it would be, lots of use. And to the point, if I may comment, about the pedestrians, what causes, we have projects in 27 cities in North America right now, and what makes a city like this really work is density. And so when you talk about foot traffic and you talk about these garages and people pulling in these garages and then going to their workplace or their respective workplace, the young man that spoke earlier, I think he said he was employed at Centene. Kids today, when they come out of school, they want a vibrant place where they can go work. And by the way, these jobs are pretty high-paying jobs. This is not a call center. This seats that we used for our traffic study is the correct number of seats. There's no premonition of future other seats or whatever. So I want to dispel that. But these $73,000 jobs are people who can afford to go buy dinner. They're people who can afford to walk up and down Forsyth. And so what really happens in a development like this, when you create this kind of density and you bring 5,000 people into your community, is these people do get out on the street. And they do walk up and down the street. And so it's not residents that cause street activity. If you have 100 residents across here, or you have 120 residential units that we're adding on Carondelet, that's not enough to pick up the street traffic to support a restaurant. That's why restaurants were struggling and why we think that retail at the base of our current parking garage is doing so extremely well. The proprietor there told me he's hired 250 people each since he opened that restaurant there, and he thinks that's the highest grossing retail block in Clayton right now. That's dramatic, and so I think that's the answer. There is a pedestrian corps for Centene employees, and I may not have done a terrific job of explaining that. But above grade at their cafeteria level, there will be a bridge that goes across Hanley, and then there's a connector to the garages that we're proposing. It would connect where the Wellbridge garage is, the future garage, and then people would eventually gain access to the street down here through some kind of what I think will be a pretty nice hub of activity. And then we've created these two plazas, so people will make their way across the street here. And I also would point out that in the daytime, we're planning access directly from this hotel area through the project to Metrolink. So another really strong pedestrian connection. And then, I didn't know if that answered all the questions, but I really think that, we are listening to the neighbors about the metal and Mr. Sauer. I respect that, those comments. I think our architecture does something that's really important, and I should point out that when you look at the Centene building, the building isn't in your face. The building's glass reflects pretty nicely the gray hues, blue sky, but it's not like a here I am, I'm jumping out at you building. The fact is that it reflects the community, it reflects the other buildings in a pretty nice light. And the intent is for all of these buildings to feel like the skyline and reflect what's outside of it as much as what's happening inside of it. So I just think that's an important distinction.
Can I just trying the pedestrian, what you're talking about, is that an internal, for your employees, internal pedestrian?
All the tenants that have access to the building would have access to the internal corridors. We think the vast majority of those users, according to the parking and traffic consultant, would actually use the street. And we would generally only see people going from Tower 1 to the Tower Track 3 site to go to the auditorium. In other words, most of the people would park for the individual building, for the first building in the garage where Wellbridge is currently and in the podium. I got a slide on that I showed. And then we actually think it's a good thing that not all of our parking is in track 3 where the hotel and the other office building users are, because we want these people to go from this parking garage and get out on the street and get down here. And I'll also just say one other thing I think is really important, and I must have not done a very good job in my presentation on the retail, but we're going to have, this isn't just a parking garage, we have 120 residential units in this building. I think that's comparable, if not larger, than the size of the Crescent residence in terms of the numbers. And we have 48,000 square feet of retail space in this building. That's a lot of retail space. That's more retail space than.
One more, just want to really understand this. So someone can walk from your current building through all of your buildings to the end of Carondelet and Jackson without leaving the buildings. Is that what I understand? That there's internal.
I'm going to try to find this slide. It might be other.
Here's the slide to show you.
I did have a slide. I think it's way. I might not be competent enough to find it this way.
While you're looking, Bob, I think the question that we're getting at with the internal above-grade walkway is the bulk of the people, the density, not the buildings, but the density of people that will be developed here will be above the street level. How do we capture that density of people on Forsyth?
By having a vibrant retail center and retail users that have $73,000 a year job, people who can afford to go down and eat there and shop there.
In lieu of eating within the internal.
We do have cafeteria facilities, but all of our internal studies show that all of those people leave the building at some point to go eat lunch. They don't eat lunch every day in our cafeteria. And we can provide real support for those numbers.
Have you studied that?
Absolutely, because we have a capacity study for our cafeteria. And our plan is to add another facility because our facility is popular, but it can't support the number of people that we have in the building at all. And I go to the building almost every day the last few months, and I see a lot of foot traffic at lunchtime.
When you say 48,000 square feet of retail space, I thought and maybe I misunderstood, 40,000 of that is going to replace Wellbridge?
Wellbridge, that's right.
So there'll just be 8 additional thousand square feet?
Well, we're going to add retail where Wellbridge is too, though.
Okay.
So the 48 is just in the east garage. And, they have over 3,000 members, Wellbridge does. So, their intent is to grow their business. And so these are other users. Hopefully they come and they work out and they go to retail shops and they eat. This is the slide that shows the connection to the west garage, we call it, to the office tower. And then this is the garage over to the east, which would be where people would go and connect to the office space over here. So over half of all of the people in this tower would have to walk from this garage. Actually, I think almost this entire garage is built to support this, both the auditorium and the office space over there. So there is a connector. To answer your question, there's currently a connector from these buildings here to the tower. You do have to go outside at some point. And then here we would do a bridge connector that I showed. And then there would be a connection through this building to this garage. And then there would be a connector to these garages.
Given our marvelous climate where we are sultry in the summer and quite often freezing in the winter, won't that be an easy out for people to avoid the street?
People as a natural kind of tendency like to get outside at some point, especially when they're working really hard. So we think it's important from a security standpoint, but our study only shows that about 30% of our people will use internal corridors on a normal basis. And again, they wouldn't really use this connector unless the people in this building were going to an event in this building, or the people were going from this building to this building. So during the day, we really do envision that 60 to 70% of the people will be on the ground out on the sidewalk. That's what this study has told us. Not just our study, but the outside independent study.
Had you considered possibly turning it inside out, where that corridor is at Forsyth, so even the internal Centene people could be seen from the street? And it could be much closer to where the
Something that we
action
should
is
study. That's something we haven't, I really didn't, but I think it's very worth studying something like that.
Ron, I'm sorry.
That's good. All good questions. So I'm going to come back to the subject of traffic because I got stuck in the Hanley traffic on the way here tonight. And I'm not sure what, amongst this group here, I know we've had many conversations about Hanley traffic, what to do about Hanley traffic, what are the sort of long-term fixes for it. And short of widening Hanley to move more cars through there, what do you think about the amount of vehicles that will end up likely getting onto Hanley to exit to get down to 4064, which is a pretty likely shot for most people to get out of Clayton?
So they have pretty strong prediction models. I think the idea of having an alternative traffic engineer involved in the process is a great idea. I have a lot of respect for the consultant that the Crescent and others have hired. And I think they're going to add value by telling us things that we haven't thought of, and we're going to find good solutions to that. But what's remarkable about the study so far is that it's nothing remarkable, that can't be solved. With solutions like synchronizing lights, it's incredible what you can do to traffic by just getting your lights coordinated. And it's not an easy thing to do, and it's not an inexpensive thing to do. So it's a pretty big infrastructure investment to make that work properly. And I think that our study is going to show that adding these additional signals, adding the synchronization we're not going to solve the problem for sure, but I think the problem will be better when we're done than it is today. I mean, it's problematic now. It's problematic.
To what extent, in the traffic study, they spoke about transit incentives, and I know Washington University has done amazing things with incentives for their employees and students. Is that part of your?
So it is, because while it isn't in this current plan, it's definitely what we anticipate in the future of being able to reduce our parking load. We obviously don't want to invest the money in parking that we don't need. It would be a disaster for us, and it might be my last project for Mr. Nydorf. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to reach a point in our project where we have real-time evidence that some of these transportation management tools that we use, like parking passes, maybe we help subsidize the cost of these metro passes. Maybe we do flex times for the employees. So those are all business decisions that I can't make for Centene. But I know that they're obviously want to have the best positive outcome for their own people, if not for the community. And of course they care about the community, but they also don't want to have people that are not satisfied with their job because they're stuck in traffic getting away from their office space. So we're looking at the project from a global standpoint, and we're trying to address those issues honestly for ourselves. I believe that by the time we get to track 4, we'll be able to reduce the number of parking spots that we need using these transportation management tools.
Is the traffic engineer here? Is there a traffic consultant?
In jail. He was loitering. Fire department letting him come in.
evening, Mr. Chairman and planning commission members.
I was hoping you could put into a little bit more context the number of daily trips, how that is in context with what the existing conditions are.
Yes. So if you look at our report, again, this is all based on the plans that were submitted on July 18th. So I just want to make sure that this does not reflect any change in information. So based on the plans that were submitted on July 18th, we are showing total new development trips of about 19,000. So that's when you take everything into account and look at the entire day. So to put in context, if you look at CBD, based on some of the data that we have, the total volume that's crosses the CBD boundary is about 120,000. 120,000. So that I think one of the things that we looked at is we looked at several points of data to see how this compares. We looked at the peak hours, we looked at the daily trips, we looked at approximate number of employees based on square footage. So based on the numbers that we have, we are anywhere between 15 to 20%. So that's the number that we have, and we did spend quite a bit of time on the context and how it works, and we have done quite a bit of work in the CBD. And a number that I always refer to is the number of jobs in CBD is anywhere between 35 and 40,000 people. So that's a number of people that are coming in and going out of Clayton. And when we look at the highest peak hour volume, the traffic that's coming in and going out of CBD, it's about 13,000 vehicles during the peak hour. So if you're 13,000 vehicles, let's say between 4:30 and 5:30 in the evening. As a point of comparison, we are projecting that it's, with the development plan that's on the table right now, it's about 2,200. So again, that fits within that 15 to 20% number. One thing that we did spend quite a bit of time is, I know somebody commented about the 10% reduction. So we are assuming that when you add everything up, transit, common trips, people that may live and walk, it's a 10%. My opinion, it's a very conservative number, right? It could be higher, because when you think about 40,000 people creating 30,000 trips in the peak hour, our trip ratios are a little higher. And that's always true. Traffic studies, my opinion, traffic studies are always conservative in nature. So we're trying to make sure that we capture the worst case scenario.
While you're there, I think I now understand the 2,000 plus peak hour and the 13,000 total movement. But can you quantify where traffic problems will be, not just in the immediate vicinity of the Centene campus, but what will happen to the roadways, Forest Park Parkway, Forsyth Boulevard going east, Hanley Road going north, even Jackson Avenue going north, all the streets that radiate out in an orthogonal pattern. Are we going to see backups elsewhere that might be outside the city of Clayton that will have to be remedied by some jurisdiction?
Let me answer your question this way. The document that we produced is more or less by the book, right? So I know anecdotally when people talk about traffic, they're talking about backups, they're talking about queuing, but we kind of go by the book here, and the number that we always refer to is, or the measure of effectiveness that we refer to is level of service. right? So they're graded, every intersection is graded A to F. An accepted level of service for an urbanized area like Clayton has always been level of service D, D for dog per intersection. So when we look at a study like this, and when we are trying to, really what we are trying to identify through our process is where we can foresee issues and what could be done to mitigate those issues. And as we were going through this process, one of the things that we found out was that the plans that were submitted didn't really work for track 3. There was just one point of access. So that was one of our recommendations, is that what's on the table isn't really working. And Chairman, to answer your question, at the beginning of this project, we sat down with the city staff and established a scope, an extent of the area that we are looking at. So essentially, we're looking at every arterial and every signalized intersection that's surrounding this development. Now, if it is the opinion of the staff that we need to expand it and look at freeway segments, we can. We do have some of the base data that's available. We can definitely evaluate that. But at this point, we are limited with the area shown on this picture.
Well, I certainly respect your professional opinion. I'm just, as someone who drives, I have noticed many choke points more in the afternoon than in the morning hours. But that's certainly conjecture on my part. Were there any other comments or questions to the traffic engineer?
Just one little clarification. When you said have a trip to work, is that equal to 2 daily trips? On the chart on page 19, you talked about a trip to work. That would be counted as 2 daily trips?
Okay, a trip is directional by nature. So if you leave home, go to work, leave work, go back home, it is counted as 2 trips.
Also, you mentioned level of service, and in reading it, I understood when some of the service was A, B, C, and D, but a couple of them dropped down to F. And could you comment on that?
Okay, so if you look at the tables, what we are showing here is we're showing level of service for the, I'm just looking at page, for example, page 15. So what we are showing here is we're showing level of service for the overall intersection. But we also want to make sure we show level of service for every approach. Again, I view our role as putting out all the data in front of you, right? So we want to give you as much data as we can, so you can make an informed decision. So we do go into the details and list out level of service for each and every approach. Now, like I said, what we are looking at is level of service D or better for the overall intersection. We do try to, as much as we can, when we program these intersections, try to make sure that each and every approach also has D or better. But in some cases, it just gets tricky. For example, Hanley and Cross Street. What we are trying to do is we are trying to prioritize Hanley more than the Cross Street. So you have Hanley and Forsyth. We are trying to make sure that we can have traffic flow on Hanley. If it means that we're sacrificing a level on Forsyth, it is done. So in the grand scheme of things, the emphasis occasionally shifts to making sure that your major thoroughfares are flowing. Although there is an effort to make sure that everything else would be D or better, it happens once in a while that you could end up with a side street that's E or an F.
It always seems like water seeks its own level, and it seems like traffic does the same thing. If there's congestion in one area, the driver will, because we don't have autonomous cars yet, the driver will make the decision and find out the less congested route.
Sure, I agree.
Any other traffic issues right now? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron, did you have more?
Not at this second, probably have more. I have one more question for Bob, I think. You know, it lists the downtown Clayton area as a 90 from a walkability pedestrian rating, which is one of those things that we love and makes Clayton a great place. Do you know when we're finished with your development, if we'd be at that level or higher still after we've completed all these things based on the criteria that you used to calculate that?
I would be making up the answer, so I'm not gonna, I'll save that for another meeting.
Okay.
And we'll get back to you, but my impression is that we have to be more positive, it has to be not positive. Sure, we believe that. We've spent a lot of time on the pedestrian experience, and we're gonna spend more time on that in the upcoming meetings, and particularly addressing some of these issues on Forsyth about the garages looking like metal, whatever. And I do think there's a big impact psychologically and socially to softening the architecture to a more residential, more multiple building kind of feel for when you come down. What is really a kind of a thoroughfare into the CBD from Forest Park from west and Forsyth.
Having been involved several years ago in the master plan study, and I realized the potential value of the transit-oriented district that much of this site is in. I'm going to make a heretical statement, unfortunately. But before we started this, I always envisioned seeing the tall structure in Subdistrict 1 at the absolute corner of Hanley and Forsyth. In other words, a bookend to the current Centene, as probably keeping it at the corner goes against what we have set up with the TOD. So you can see where I'm going, that I think we would be stronger to strengthen that intersection of Hanley and Forsyth, but I understand under the current regulations, we cannot do it.
I would also just offer this, while I don't want to disagree with the chairman, but I do want to say that, I think, it's an opinion, there's all opinions are kind of out there, but, first of all, the time I presented the project where the Crescent is, I presented a project there, which would have been a much taller building. I always really believed that the roundabout deserved and wanted, tall buildings. That's what was in the master plan. That's kind of what the original people envisioned that were in the early master planning studies and that sort of thing. But we met with them, and there was a very strong message to us that Forsyth was going to be transitional, and that while people might want to think that the tower should go on the corner, I think if you could imagine four tall buildings, so you've got here, Laclede, you've got our tower, then you'd have another tower group, as opposed to transitioning to the south, where eventually I believe another residential building will probably built where the car wash is, and it deserves a fairly tall site. I mean, I hope that the plan is followed and that that's where a really nice, tall residential building could end up where the car wash is. And so while some people may think tall buildings would be good here, even the TOD says tall buildings, high-density buildings along Forsyth to the east of Lyle, I think the neighbors to the north will be very strong opponents of any kind of plan like that. And I agree with them. I think the buildings on Forsyth on the south side at 90 feet are totally appropriate. I think they got it right when they did the zoning, because you got these tall buildings circling Carondelet, then you have this transition, and then I really believe you have two types of zoning on the north side. I promise I'll never be in front of this board asking for any kind of zoning on the north side of Forsyth. But on the north side of Forsyth, you've got two kinds of zoning, or maybe even three, but definitely transitional down to the residential. And so it just makes sense that you've got this slide slope from the tall buildings of Carondelet down to the residents to the north, and I think that's appropriate personally, because of the shadows are going to the north, not to the south.
And even with my previous statement, I agree with you about stepping down as we go north. I think that's the proper thing to do. So I'm just having a little conflict in my own mind about that massing there.
That happens to me all the time.
Don't go there. But if we could stick with the density again, we've had some comments on it. The tower itself seems to be very high and placed, partially driven by the parking there. And I know we weren't looking at the Wellbridge site tonight in depth, because that had just been submitted. But you made the comment that the Sub-District 1 garage would be only 2 levels below grade in lieu of the 4 previously projected. But if we are to see additional parking along garages along Forsyth, would you consider having more underground parking so we could lower the massing of the garages as well as the massing of Tower 1? And I'm throwing it out, not for an answer, but
I think it's consideration. I think everything is still on paper, and the purpose of these meetings is to study issues and comments like that. And we're in the early stages. I said earlier, we're in the SVD process now, and we intend to take as long as this process takes to get through to get to the right answer.
Sure. Well, we appreciate that, and we see it the same way. I think many of us see parking garages as a necessary evil, but they truly are not inhabited space. They are just a servant space. So that's why I throw that out. We'd certainly like to see the parking be a little more respectful for the areas, and I think if we could go lower, we might be able to create a little better environment for the immediate context.
This is a kind of a related question. Do we know how the parking at the current Centene garage is being used and consumed, and what its sort of general occupancy load is?
It's full. So we have about 1,600 cars in that garage. We have, I'm going to go from memory, so don't quote me on this, but I think we have about 270 parking spots in the garage that's on the west of the original headquarter building.
Okay.
I think there's 170 or something below the 100,000 square foot original building on 7711. So we have 500 spots on Carondelet, and then we have 1,600 spaces that face Forsyth, and we use all of them. We basically have about 200 empty spots a day with the exception that we did do some reserved parking in that garage, which is not always full, and our intention is not to do that again necessarily. The only other thing I want to point out, since we talked about the existing garage, is how without a signal, that garage flows in and out extremely well. I use the garage a lot, a couple times a week in the morning and in the evening, and it amazes me at 5:15 or 5:30 without how fast that garage empties out in the peak hour.
And how big did you say that garage was? I'm sorry.
1,600.
160.
Yeah, 1,600. So it's a comparable height and comparable size of what we believe we need to service the buildings. And the real study would be, do we want to have, smaller buildings and less jobs and less people? Because that would be the result of reducing the size of the parking. The parking is directly a derivative of the demand in our buildings.
Well, we're not, I think we're certainly supportive of Centene as a strong corporate client, and we'd like to make it work for all the entities involved. We're not suggesting in any way that we cut back the number of employees, but to make sure that all
You're
the
just
component
looking
elements
for creative
work.
solutions, and that's what
Absolutely.
we're here to discuss.
And I think that your current garage is very vibrant. The current garage is very vibrant. For garage space with the retail in front of it. I love the wind veil, one of my favorite art pieces. So I do think with creative work, it can accomplish both.
Right, I agree with Joanne, and that the current garage on Forsyth really does benefit from a massing of office space around it and directly across the street in the two EOP center buildings. But we have currently a slightly different condition of the proposed garages to the east of Hanley Road, because there will not be currently, and we don't know what will go on the north side of Forsyth, but it's very, very low density. It produces very few people coming out of it.
What, you mean where we're going to build Wellbridge?
No, I'm saying that.
Across the street.
Right. The retail to the east of Hanley will not benefit parallel to the garage retail that is west of Hanley, because the density west of Hanley is much greater than it is east of Hanley.
Well, again, I
don't know what's coming.
I guess what I'm saying is the overall density of a project like this, and the fact that many people will use rapid transit to get to the auditorium as an example. I mean, it is going to be a more vibrant area, and densities, again, is what causes foot traffic, and that foot traffic is what is going to cause retailers to really start noticing the rest of the blocks around us. And because you have a strong master plan, hopefully it'll be followed. There'll be a rigid process just like there is for us. So.
Other comments?
Oh, new guy. New guy.
Oh, yes.
I like it. I waited all night to say I like it. I won't take up a lot of time. I'm in the same business as Bob, and I get to build.
My competitor is going to go that.
Yeah, but I mean, if I stand back far enough and look at this project, I see it as a great benefit for our whole community, not just Clayton, but for St. Louis, because I always think of my community as St. Louis. I understand people in the room have issues with sightlines and issues with traffic, but I think Centene and Clayco have every intention of resolving those. Now, not that everybody's going to be 100% happy, but when I look at a project like this, I think of Denver, Nashville, Memphis, Chicago, Minneapolis, Birmingham, Indianapolis. Those towns are kicking ass. If you haven't noticed, we're not. And this is, I mean, it's how inspired these guys are to bring this project to our community. So I mean, I can stand back from it far enough to say, I am not conflicted. And again, I trust that these developers and Centene will take every step they can to satisfy as many people as possible. One question, two questions. Track 4, is that after 2020, or is that also?
Yeah.
That's after 2020, so we're gonna have a chance.
Yeah, we could not, we could not move the people out of that building until we have the new building. That building is fully occupied.
Okay.
So that's, the phasing is kind of a domino effect.
On the parking, if self-driving cars become such a big deal in 50 years, can you even consider alternative uses for all this garage space?
Yeah, I do think we can. I think we've asked the design team, and I think we have some of the best, to consider how would we, if we made the north face of the garage look like residential, can we make it into residential?
Could it be converted at some point in the future?
I mean, they're doing it in Chicago right now. They're converting everything to residential downtown. If we design it properly now, it's not going to be very difficult to do. And as I said before, I don't know how many people are aware of it. When we built the plaza, I can't remember, but I think we built 800 or 900 cars in that garage. That garage goes down and it goes up 5 or 6 levels. And Hush, I think 4 or 5 years ago, converted the top level of the parking garage to office space. So it absolutely can be done, and that garage wasn't designed for it. So they had to probably spend more money than they would if we're creative and we do a good job. I mean, Centene doesn't want to build parking if they don't have to have it because it's expensive. So it's more of a deterrent to them than anyone. So we are trying to find creative solutions.
Well, we certainly have welcomed Centene in the past. We want to work with the entire team to make this work for not only Centene and Clayco, but for the entire city as we go forward. I think Scott summed it up pretty well, that it can be a world-class solution and something that our St. Louis region certainly needs. We're very lucky that they like to remain and grow right here in Clayton. I think hopefully we've given some constructive criticism for thought, and we're not going to close the public hearing. We're going to continue it to the future so that it will be one continuous record. And are there any other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Bob, I appreciate the fact that you did a concise presentation this evening and that this feels cooperative and collaborative as opposed to adversarial, which is very appreciated by this group.
Well, and I hope the community finds it to be an honest process from us as well. We think there's been some misrepresentations in the community. We're very aware of that. We think this project is worth nothing less than at least honesty from every side of the coin. And so our intention is to be transparent. We've been being transparent. We'll never keep anything from the public that we know about. And we want to separate fact from fiction because it's too important of a project to every stakeholder to not get it right. So thank you.
I just wanted to thank you for all the public engagement you've done. It's been very phenomenal. I appreciate it phenomenally.
Thank you. I think I've made some new friends. Maybe not, too. Okay, thank you. Is that
Staff, any final words tonight? Craig?
I just make a big comment about the facilities, and a lot of the people that I wish heard it aren't here for that, but obviously we did not estimate there would be almost double the interest in attending this, and in future we will definitely plan better, find another venue if we can to try and make it a more active process and more people participate. This will be posted, it is being recorded and will be posted out online. So anybody that you, many of your neighbors that were here to speak and didn't have a chance to, let them know that there will be other meetings and opportunities to do that, and we will have all this videotaped and posted up on the website tomorrow. So, and there also will be a transcript being made, so we're trying to account for it after the fact, but in the future, we'll definitely have better facilities available so that everybody can participate.
Thank you. Well, with that, it's 8:30. We appreciate everybody's 3 hours, and we will continue the public hearing to a future date. So thank you, everyone.